All right, welcome back to Blue by 90. I'm Justin, joined by Tanner today, and we've got a special guest from On3, Clayton Sayfie. Clayton, good friend of the podcast. I mean, this is what multiple times on the pod now. Might have to start putting you on payroll, but appreciate you coming on. Shout out to Feldman Chevrolet as we get this thing going. We talk about Bryce Underwood all the time. Feldman hooked up Bryce Underwood. I don't know if you've seen they do have a little commercial spot. They're going to be out at our tailgate too. So I want to give them a quick shout out for being great partners for us and for a bunch of these guys, the athletes, taking care of them. But Clayton, appreciate you coming on, man. We are 10 days till kickoff, Zeke Berry days till kickoff here. So excited. I think this is like, we got through the hammer stuff. We got through. Now we'll talk about Savion Hiter's commitment. I think we're just ready to get to football right now.
Yeah, we're also Tom Brady days till kickoff.
Ooh,
Tom Brady at Michigan. And yeah, probably a good amount of other good players. But thanks for having me. We just chopped it up for 30 minutes off recording. I think there were a lot of interesting topips covered that people would be interested in. It's too bad that
they'd want to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, it's great. It's great to be here. You guys are the best. And yeah, the Feldman, we were just talking about it too. The Feldman event with Bryce Underwood and a bunch of guys, and you guys did your show from there. That was awesome. So Feldman is a great place. I can vouch for them for sure.
There you go. Yeah, you were there. You saw the guys. Why don't we start there, actually? That was, a month ago now or whatever. But you were there for our signing event at Feldman Chevrolet of Highland. And what is your take? I mean, this is something that, like, obviously you go, to the press conferences, you see some of these guys. I want you to give your idea, because I try to tell people, when you see these guys up close, when you're looking at a Marlon Klein and a Donovan McCulley and a Bryce Underwood and some of these guys, and you're like, okay, they're football players. Give us your take on just like when you see up and close these guys, even without their pads on, what are your thoughts?
They got aura, especially Bryce Underwood. We were just talking about that too. And I think, Marlon Klein's huge. Donovan McCulley, Marlon Klein, they're similar height as well. But Donovan McCulley obviously looks like a great athlete. You can tell he was a great basketball player in high school, and that obviously helps him out. But yeah, in Bryce Underwood, it's funny. He did his official visit photos back in November of last year, I think at the Northwestern game or that week, or maybe early the next week or whatever it was. He looks completely different, like in a good way from those photos. When you see him now, having been around him a couple times, including at that event and then at the Champion Circle golf outing. And it's not what Ohio State fans we're hoping, right, that he's fat. And he laughed about that when we had him on our show. He said that the craziest thing he's seen about himself online is that he's fat, but he's jacked. He's massive. He could play other positions other than quarterback if you really wanted him to, but he's got a hell of an arm. He's really fast. He's really athletic, and he's a hell of a quarterback. So
let me ask you real quick on that. I've made this comparison a couple times, which I think it's natural. I kind of hate myself even for doing it, but comparing Bryce to JJ, right? Like he's, JJ's the last great quarterback, obviously, for Michigan, won the national title. So
Davis beat Ohio State. So
yeah, true. Davis did beat Ohio State. So he's 4-0. He's 4-0.
Yep.
Hasn't lost and doesn't plan to. I talk about how JJ, when he came in as basically the same age as Bryce did, right? He was young, was coming in it. He was a baby. JJ, didn't have a single whisker of facial hair, noodle arm, noodle body, zero muscle on him. Bryce is very different than that.
Mm-hmm. Bryce is it is weird. Yeah. And JJ, I think the hair is similar, but that's about it. He's gotten a lot bigger. His face, he looks more like an adult. He's about to get married. He's about to have a kid. So he's much more of an adult than me. But yeah, you look at Bryce, who has bulked up since he's gotten here already, but was already big and physically developed, physically mature for a guy who just turned 18 yesterday as we record right now. So it is just kind of a different world. I mean, I guess it's a difference between the weird thing is too. So JJ was the number 30 or 40 recruit in the country, something like that. And you could argue he played his way into being, if you look back, higher than that. Right. Ends up being the number 10 pick in the draft. Bryce at number 1, then you're comparing him with other number 1s across other classes. And if he's Trevor Lawrence or something like that, then, you're talking about potentially a really good season, a really good team right away. So that's kind of exciting. So him coming in, it's hard to know what to expect because you have not been in this spot before. I think people talk about Drew Henson when he came in. It's similar excitement, probably more for Bryce, given that they needed him. Like, think of what this would be if they didn't get Bryce Underwood last November, which they easily couldn't have, right? I mean, he was committed to LSU for 10, 11 months, but I'm just excited to see what he looks like. Game 1, maybe especially game 2. I mean, I think he's really good. I saw him as a freshman. He threw 7 touchdown passes. I saw him at a camp in 8th grade. He looked bigger, faster, stronger than everyone else out there. This is a special talent. So it's going to be a fun 3 years, but you hope it's fun from day one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, freshman quarterbacks, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, probably the best example of a guy coming in and didn't start immediately. That was when I believe Kelly Bryant started the first few games for them, and then Trevor Lawrence took over and just, I think, had really good stats, and obviously they blew out Alabama in the national championship. So
real quick on that, Tanner, this is a total tangent, but I remember one of the more insane things ever in college football is people after that freshman year saying that Trevor Lawrence should sit out for 2 years until the draft.
We're going to get that with Jeremiah Smith next year.
Oh,
too.
for sure.
People love to have that take that don't love college football, right? But
and we've seen an Ohio State player challenge the eligibility rules for the NFL and being able to go after your sophomore year. We've seen it from, I believe, Mike Williams at USC wanted to do that and sat out his junior year. So it feels like something that there are rarely guys like Jeremiah Smith who could have played in the NFL last year as a true freshman. That doesn't happen very often. So I think the 3-year rule makes a lot of sense. But
can I get ahead of something real quick? Sorry, we just keep cutting you off. Bryce should sit out. Bryce Underwood should sit out his sophomore and junior year.
Hey, if Michigan goes undefeated and wins a national championship with him as a freshman,
I think actually let's go one step further. He should just sit out now. He should just not play.
Right. He's proven enough in fall camp.
Well, and honestly, as we see with Anthony Richardson in the NFL, throwing a lot of, having a lot of snaps in college doesn't mean that much,
Yeah.
You just go in there with 200 career snaps and you get beat up by Danny Dimes.
Danny Dimes.
I think, save yourself. Don't get hurt. You've proven it all to go number 1 in 2028, right? And you're good to go.
So, you don't need to play football.
I like that take, Clayton.
But I think we talked about this pre-show, Clayton. These guys, especially at quarterback, come into college and they've had personal trainers, quarterback coaches. They've been going to camps and 7-on-7s all summer, and they've been playing year round since they were in middle school. So, and I think the other thing that we've heard too, and we continue to hear this, but a few months ago, earlier this spring, we had Derek Moore on the show, who I think is going to have a phenomenal year for Michigan. I think he's going to be an All-American type player. But one thing he mentioned was Bryce was in his lifting group this winter and earned their respect immediately. So I think when you talk about the talent, obviously the kid just oozes confidence. You just kind of see it. I guess that's what aura means, according to the kids nowadays. But that quiet confidence, and Derek some of the guys mentioned that we've talked to that he doesn't really talk trash on the field. He just kind of lets his play do the talking. So I just think with all of that, like just the total package in terms of he works hard, he's earned the team's respect. He gave him some beats yesterday. On Tuesday. And, I think it's just he's done all the right things since arriving on campus. This could have gone a lot of different ways with a different type of kid, but the way he was raised, the way he is, I think it's gone about as perfectly as you could hope, off the field coming into this season, and now it's just, hey, can it be put together pretty quickly? Because we know sophomore, junior year, we have an idea of what to maybe expect in terms of, the lights click for JJ as well.
A question for you there, Clayton, to Tanner's point is like, how important or how big of a deal is it that Bryce Underwood has already earned that respect from his teammates as, a very young guy who's only been, in Schembechler Hall for 8 months at this point, right? And are you surprised at that at all? Is that something because I do think that that's something that you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have that, it doesn't all work.
Yeah, it just feels like every step of the way he's, like, to Tanner's point, he's made the right move, and it's probably somewhat calculated. It's also probably just the way he's wired. Like, he does, for a guy who could really do anything. I mean, I don't know how much money's actually in his bank account right now, but and obviously more coming, and he could kind of show up and go through the motions and go to practice and then do whatever after that and drive around in whatever car. And I mean, the things you hear about him is that he's at Glick Fieldhouse at 10 p.m. He's there at 11 p.m. I think Sharon Moore has mentioned he's been home and had to call Bryce and say, go home. And, those always seem like the cliche or maybe even like made up stories when you hear around college football. But I think it's the truth with Bryce Underwood from everything that we've heard. And the receivers talking about how eager he is to throw at them all summer. I mean, he hasn't been named the starter yet. He'll be named the starter on Monday, I predict, unless, something crazy happens. But the players have known. I think the players know that he's that guy. They've known since summer, maybe spring, whatever it was. I think Davis Warren last December before the bowl game, when Bryce had come in for bowl practices, said you can already tell why he was the number one recruit. That was talent-wise, but the guys have talked about how his voice has grown and grown and grown throughout the offseason. And it felt like the offense last year when they broke camp and they came into the year and they were playing Fresno and they were playing Texas, it didn't feel like that was an offense, and there wasn't a lot of talent other than Loveland, but it just felt like they were an offense that didn't really have any sort of edge or any sort of leader or any sort of identity. Mullins carried them on their back for a few games, luckily, a couple weeks later. But this year, I just feel like they at least know a few things they can hang their hat on. One of them is that they have a quarterback with that type of swagger, that type of confidence. He's a leader already. So I think it's huge. I think it's massive. And it gives you a shot because you have a great defense and a great kicker to win a big game in week 2. And then you start picking up steam and this thing could get really fun.
Well, and I think, you talk about last year, how much of a difference do you think it makes when – I think it probably makes a pretty big difference, but, all fall camp last year, what was the word? Alex Orji. Literally, it was like 2 days before the first game.
Yeah.
Davis Warren. Now leading into it that it's going to be – like how much of a difference does that make on just the team psyche, just the confidence to know like, hey, there wasn't some last-minute switch up here. This has been the guy the moment he stepped on campus. Well,
could be, but
watch out for our boy Davis. Don't let him get healthy.
I'd be shocked.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's huge. Like I've talked about this at the time. I think it was after Texas or Fresno State, kind of the point I was just making. I felt like that was a team that had just finished their first week or two of fall camp. Like they were not ready for the season. And it was mostly the offense's fault, right? The defense against Texas got exploited, but they were gassed because they didn't get a first down until I think like the second quarter or whatever it was. It just wasn't an offense that was ready to play the season yet. And then,
and also there, sorry to cut you off, I'll let you finish, but just a point there was like, that was Sharon's first fall camp too, right? Like he was thrown into the mix. I think a lot of people forget, like, because Sharon's been a part of the program for so long, like he didn't even know he was the head coach until like, January, right? Like February. Yeah. So
when you look back at, and I know it takes forever for them to get through the system, but I was Googling this a couple of weeks ago to figure out, write an article about how big it is that Wink Martindale's back. And he was officially hired on like March 1 or 2.
That's great.
He was there for a couple weeks before that because you got to go through the official process and all this stuff, and you can still kind of get to work. I remember he was at a basketball game in February, but like he didn't probably know anyone's names at that point. This year, your point about all of the entire staff pretty much being back, except for a new offensive coordinator who got here in December, 3 months, 4 months earlier than some of those other assistant coaches. Lou Esposito got there in the middle of spring ball. He didn't know who any of those guys were. He'd watch them on TV. And apparently he just started yelling at them right away. Use your hands and all this stuff. And that's how Lou is. And he's done a great job. But they're all back. They don't have to learn anyone's names anymore. They know what works. Wink Martindale is more comfortable in college football. I think the players are more comfortable with him. The offensive side of the ball, you have more talent, better quarterback, probably a better coordinator, hopefully an improved offensive line, better receiving core. So you feel better about that. So I think year 2 and Sharon Moore kind of understands, he figured out at the end of last year how to win games with one arm tied behind their back, basically no offense. You're kind of running out the clock for 120 minutes against Ohio State and Alabama, and you still won. Now that they could have a competent offense,
that's a hilarious way to put it. Of like, you score one time and you're like, all right, how long can we milk this thing? Like it's those like high school basketball games with no shot clock, and they just sit at the half court line. Like that was
no, I've been to some of those games. Hudsonville, Muskegon. Were you at that game several years ago in overtime? Yep. They just stood at half court.
It was terrible.
And was that I forget the kid that went to Michigan State was there, but you're totally right. They get Ohio State, right? They get a short field. They start on like the 4 after Amir Hall's interception. It takes them 4 downs to barely score the only touchdown of the game. And then they just had to play defense the rest of the way and control the clock. The offense controlled the clock. Yeah. But they were able to figure out a formula last year. And now I think the offense will at least be solid, okay, with higher upside than that. And that could go a long way. Now, the defense has to be really good as well, but probably not as good because you're going to have a good offense. So we're going to, last year was a test in, okay, how good can you actually be if you don't have an offense or a quarterback that's very good? Like we always talk about it when you have a good quarterback, it's like, oh, what a difference this is. And look at JJ. And it's like, you don't really see it on the other end of that very often. So in that, sense, it was a nice scientific study that I think we're all glad is over with. And now we can see, complementary football and all those buzzwords that actually do make a difference. Turns out that it does help.
Well, real quick, Clayton, we talked about, running out the clock. I mean, fourth quarter against the Ohio State Buckeyes, and Michigan held the ball for 13 minutes and 3 seconds out of the 15 minutes in the fourth quarter, 101 yards to 10 yards advantage. So it worked.
Well, it did. And you have to credit the offense for that.
Absolutely. They
moved the ball. I'm not ragging on the offense.
As much as like, obviously we all know, and I think they would admit that they struggled last year, right? Like that was like the most Superman performance by Kalel Mullings, and you've got to give that offensive line a ton of credit for who struggled all year, right? Like, let's be honest. They were not that 2023 or 22 or 21 offensive line. They had new guys in there. Evan Link struggled. And so but they put on literally like, all right, let's go play one quarter of unbelievable football when it matters the most. And they did it. And okay, speaking of the offensive line, I think that, we have all talked about Bryce Underwood. We've talked about the defense being unbelievable. We've talked about Donovan McCulley and Fred and Marlon Klein and how those guys are so important, and we're excited to see them. The biggest X factor, in my opinion, to this season of it being an 8-4 team versus a 10-2 versus 11-1 is this offensive line. And I think that you look at what they brought back from last year in Gio and Evan Link and Crippen, and then what they added. What are your thoughts on the O-line? How good do you expect them to be? How good, like, what's the floor ceiling situation for the O-line?
Yeah, I don't think the floor is that high, but I do think it's going to be better. Like I could see a situation where it's not very good again. I'm kind of in believe it when I see it, or not believe it when I see it mode, but wait and see mode at least. Because it's just tough to say, right? It sounds like they're more optimistic about the offensive line this year. I mean, but they were optimistic last year, and then it didn't really work out. So I want to see it. But I think it'll be better. I think that the interior of the line could be pretty darn good, especially if Greg Crippen, kind of plays at a higher level and uses the year of experience. And Giovanni El-Hadi last year admitted that he didn't play very well. He's bulked up. I think that helps. I feel like they were kind of small last year, some of those guys. And, for as much as we said going into last year, oh, well, he started a couple games in 2022 and whatever, he didn't really have full-time experience. So having that under his belt is big. Andrew Sprague at right tackle, I think in time is going to be really, really good. Evan Link is more comfortable at left tackle. He played there in high school. He played there in the bowl game, seemed to perform better than he did in the regular season at right tackle. At the same time, it's still a concerning spot. Like, I've talked about this before, but, JJ did not get great tackle play in 2023. But the best thing was that the right tackle, who was giving up a lot of the pressures, but he could see that. He would almost expect it, and then he would kind of step up, or he'd get around the guy who gets free. And those were some of their more explosive plays. Him and Roman Wilson on those scramble drills were incredible. Sometimes it was Colston Loveland or Cornelius Johnson, who just standing like inches away from being out of bounds and would make a huge catch. So the blind side is different, but at the same time, Bryce is a hell of an athlete. He's more athletic than JJ was, and JJ's a great athlete. So he's going to be able to erase some mistakes. I just hope that there aren't so many of those where all he's doing is running around and dodging guys and taking a big sack or making a big play, and they kind of negate each other. And you're like, okay, there's not a ton of rhythm. So it's not all on him. It's not all on, the pass protection. They got to get themselves in good positions by, being able to run the ball on early downs and things like that. But yeah, it's a number one question mark on this team. Because if you can have a good run game, lean on those guys, wear teams down, protect good enough for Bryce Underwood, I mean, then the offense should be good, really good. There's no reason why they wouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you go back to last year, and I like to remind people, I think we all saw it with our eyes and felt it, but like the passing game was literally the worst in the NCAA, right? It wasn't like, hey, this is, you go from one of the best, most efficient offenses, it's not the most explosive offense in 23, but one of the most efficient, to literally the worst. It wasn't like, hey, we regress back to average. And so
right.
Even if
to see that big of a regression is incredible.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing too. It's a great thing to bring up, because I think that the fact that they do have a threat to use all parts of the field, like deep ball, even the easy passes that they just didn't find, or, somebody was open in the flat and they never got to that read or whatever it was last year that would have made things just so much easier on themselves.
Yes. The
fact that, there was a game or two, and I remember charting it after one of the games last year, they ran on they might have had 19 first down plays. They ran on 18 of them. They were just so predictable because they couldn't do much.
Right.
That teams were they would know what they're doing and run blitz at them and make life miserable for Kalel Mullings. He kind of had that lull in the middle of the year because they just had no juice, no explosiveness. Having the threat of other things,
because he ran it 1,000 times.
Yeah, he had to be beat up. And so all those things, like the fact that you're going to have a threat of, doing a bunch of different things, is going to open things up for everybody and help the offensive line out, because, when you're the O-line and the other team kind of can figure that, hey, we can sell out here to stop the run because there's no threat of anything else. That's a lot on the offensive line's plate. So that should help those guys out too.
Well, surely with the, Kalel Mullings kind of taking a beating last year, that in a 3rd and 6 situation late in the game when you can't throw the football, maybe you get a stop. You would think, defensively, a team would be able to get a stop when he's, hitting the backfield. Right. I don't know, just a hypothetical that I'm throwing out there.
And he was hypothetically, he was in the injury tent earlier in the game and got hurt on that play. And still,
I don't know. Hypothetically, Captain 0-4 was just bitched on the ground by Max Bredesen again. I'm just talking here. I don't know.
Right. Hypothetically, it's like the most important game ever to them, and
not anymore. Well, hypothetically, that game
devalued. Yeah,
doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's home
I still saw our guy Mr. Ohio on Twitter, who I actually respect and like. He seems like a good dude and not a psychopath. But he was even saying like he'll take this year losing to Michigan for another natty. And I'm just like, sure, we don't have to think about those things, because we don't lose to Ohio State. So, like when we win our natties, we beat them.
I mean,
well, it was like the last time they lost to Ohio State. It wasn't like black and white picture on the TV or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I might have saw it 4K, but don't want to get my facts get in the way of a good story. No, I honestly like. Obviously, you won the national championships. That was pretty sick. I just know myself. I know that stings for them.
Oh,
that they didn't beat Michigan, that they didn't win the Big Ten, that they didn't go undefeated. I know that because that would bother me. Like, yeah, it's a national championship, cool, but like the reason college football is great. Like when I was a kid, yeah, you had the BCS, but like BCS bowls were still important. Like when Michigan beat Virginia Tech when I was in high school, like that was a big moment for Brady Hoke and for Michigan. And so like college football wasn't just built on winning or national championship or not. It was built on the rivalries, winning your conference. It's more of a regional thing. Now, obviously, we've expanded, and now the big Tony Petitti wants to do 24, 28 teams. What are we doing? What's happened to the game? We're going to have fringe top 25 teams in the playoff?
We
made the playoff last year.
It's as bad as college basketball, which I love, is getting to that point where we've had losing records make the tournament, right? Like, that is not okay. That's not how sports should go, right? And so I agree with you. All right, real quick. Also, so transitioning, I threw out yesterday the Dave Portnoy middle finger picture to the crowd.
I saw that.
And I think that this is something that I just want to touch on a little bit of, everybody from our rivals to just, a lot of people that were against Michigan over the past 24 months at this point, right? Almost, thought that the hammer was coming, talked about the hammer coming, talked about how we were going to vacate the wins, talked about how recruiting and every recruit was going to bolt and every guy was going to hit the portal as soon as all this stuff came down. Bryce in particular was going to bolt, all this stuff. Well, we have a 48-hour stretch in the past couple days here where you don't get the hammer, and then Savion Hiter, or I guess it's more than 48 hours, but you have Michigan doesn't get the hammer like they talked about the hammer coming. Savion Hiter, 5-star, number one running back in the nation, commits, and the haters are more furious than ever. Clayton, want to get your take on just like where like that all coming to fruition now, and we haven't even played football yet, right? We're 10 days out from football. So the momentum that Michigan has, despite all of these rumblings and rumors and people trying to, drag their name through the mud, where is Michigan at in terms of recruiting momentum, football momentum, all that right now?
I think those people on social media that their lives have been consumed by the hammer potentially coming down, kind of figured out, at least, partly the Savion Hiter commitment, that it's just like they're in their own world, and the people who are making their life choices, based on what Michigan's program is and comparing it to other programs and, whatever, don't really care about that, aren't really affected by it. Obviously the two have nothing to do with each other, but yeah, it just shows that like Michigan's just going to continue that momentum. They've had an incredible stretch of recruiting in the summer. Their class is almost wrapped up. I'm sure there'll be some late, last minute flips each way or whatever. And, the way it worked last year, Michigan benefited from those. So that, there's still some more to come. But I think you got an unbelievable talent at running back. And I saw Steve Wiltfong from Rivals said yesterday that Michigan may have gotten the best recruit in the country in this class. He's ranked number 8 He's the number one running back, but you can't, apparently they don't rank running backs number one based on positional value, whatever. They kind of go off the draft. So you may have gotten the best player in the class 2 years in a row. That backfield for years to come. And I don't want to forget either about Jordan Marshall is already there. I mean, Jasper Parker's there. I guess he's showing out in fall camp. Justice Haynes could be here next year. I know Tony Alford has told those guys, I want to get you in and out in 3, keep some tread on the tires. You go to the NFL, we'll develop you. But Hiter back there too. You're talking about, Haskins, Corum, Donovan Edwards, but maybe better. I don't want to say that because those guys are legends, but just a huge commitment to have that firepower to, you want to rebuild this offense. They haven't had maybe as many weapons in the past. I mean, it's a hell of a way to do it, and to do it at the running back position where they have had great players, but just continue that is going to be great. I mean, I was watching his highlights yesterday and just be like, wow, this guy is just different than any running back I've seen. I think people are talking about he's the best since Bijan Robinson or Travion Henderson coming out of high school. So it's huge. And it's very exciting. And they got a top 10 class again. And, obviously Champion Circle has a lot to do with that, but Sharon Moore is recruiting well too, the assistant coaches. So they got things rolling. They got things figured out. And now, it's, as you said, Justin, like now we're 10 days away. We're Tom Brady, Zeke Berry days away, and we can focus on football, and you put a lot of this other stuff behind you and know that you got great recruits coming in. I think it's a good feeling for a lot of Michigan fans.
Well, I look at the On3 rivals now. I got to get used to this merger.
Yeah.
I feel like Jackie Moon just shouting merger in the room. But Michigan 10th, Ohio State 9th. Clayton, I know you're more of a team guy, more on the beat, than some of the folks that are over at On3 and Rivals that are covering more of the high school recruiting aspect. But last year we saw, obviously, we talked about Bryce flipping from LSU to Michigan, but Shamari Earls, Jordan Young flipped from Clemson to Michigan. There's a couple other guys I'm probably forgetting. I know I am, but they just flipped so many guys last year. You got to think that there's some guys out there this year. Is there anybody that maybe again, I know you're not recruiting about anybody you're maybe thinking about? I'm thinking about Devon Benjamin, Kerry Adams, a couple elite defensive backs that are committed elsewhere. But, you got to think, get the Oracle money cannon. Let's go find some flips.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have, I guess those names seem to be ones that come up. So I think you're on the right track. I would imagine those pursuits are out there, and you keep things like that quiet. Kind of like, some of the ones last year that pop up, and it's like, oh, they flipped Nate Marshall back from Auburn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was another one. The high 4-star edge who was committed to Michigan, probably got the bag from Auburn. Then it's like, Michigan's like, wait, we have money now. Do you mind just coming back to us? And he's like, yeah, sure. We'll do that. So, and it's, it's a great thing because it's a place he wanted to be anyway, if all things were equal. And it sounds like they were at the end. So, I think we're going to get some of those fireworks probably again. But the class is very large and nearly full now. I think saw Ethan McDowell, who covers recruiting for us at the Wolverine, said the over-under is about 2.5 more non-specialist commits. So, yeah, there's still some big fish out there that they're probably picking their spots with. But you look at it from a positional standpoint, I mean, they've got a heck of a defensive line class coming in. They have a good quarterback, a great running back, a great tight end, some good receivers. Like they have.
It's a good class already. Like right? I think that is what you're getting at. Of like, I think if you ended it today, we'd be pretty freaking pumped, right? Like you'd be like, okay, Sharon, you did your job, in the recruiting staff. And so, the other thing that I wanted to touch on there is, I think right now it feels like with Savion Hiter, committing, that's like, it's like, okay, having Bryce Underwood is kind of a cheat code in that aspect. It's like, hey man, would you like to be the running back for the number one quarterback in the nation who has a cannon for an arm, can run, and like has aura, as the kids say? Like I do feel like that is already happening, and he still hasn't stepped onto the field. So to your guys' point about the flips and just like 2027 recruiting too, my thought process is, okay, as he plays this out and, if all things go as well as we think that they're going to go, it's going to just be like, guys are going to see, and especially at the wide receiver position, right? Like, it's going to be, does Calvin Russell take a second look when all of a sudden it's like he sees Bryce Underwood to Fred Moore, Donovan McCulley bomb, and it's like, oh, they are going to throw the ball really well. And so I do expect some of that stuff to happen and to unfold here during this season, to be like, all right, we've talked about having this really good quarterback and you want to come play with him. Now here's the actual film. This could be you catching this 70-yard bomb.
No, I totally agree. And I think that the transfer portal is going to be a big part of that too in December,
for sure,
where there are going to be some good, proven, productive wide receivers out there that have a year or two left, want to prove themselves and go to the NFL, and are going to look at Michigan's offense, believe it or not, Michigan's offense as somewhere where they can do that, and where you don't have to sacrifice as much as I know Roman Wilson used to talk about it. And he would talk about it in a way that he was willing to do it, right? He was willing to block. He was willing to have a great offense through mostly the running game. But, he had a great year. And I think he had like 789 yards in 15 games and 12 touchdowns or 14 or whatever it was in some huge ones. And I thought it was a monster year for, in relation to Michigan really not having their starters in the fourth quarter, running the ball a lot, those things.
Yeah.
But now I think you're going to get back to, or not get back to, because the all-time records and passing and all this are so low compared to Ohio State and these other schools. You're going to at least be at more of a normal level. And then I can't wait to see fans on Twitter of other teams be like, Savion Hiter flipped to us. Michigan throws too much. Michigan's more of a passing team. Like that's what they're trying to do for the receivers and quarterbacks. But I think that's a great point. And I think that in the portal too, we're going to see them get a better core, a little bit more firepower for the 2027 season, which if you look at the roster, especially on offense, 2026, that and 27 are shaping up to be, when you look down the road, which you can't do too much in the portal era, but when you look down the road a little bit, there's going to be some talented players that are sophomores, juniors, seniors, and you could have a good offense and, a really good team.
Yeah, I'm excited for it because I think that obviously, Michigan and Sharon have proven that they are aggressive in NIL. They're aggressive in the portal. They're aggressive in just recruiting in general. And so they've done that off of, a very poor season, right? And so, if you can add some success to that, that's when you really start snowballing with a lot of these recruits. And you saw that under Harbaugh as well, especially in the portal, right? To your point, I think you see, like, you don't get a Josiah Stewart, right, if Michigan doesn't have a 2021 year, right? And some of those different guys that were, key pieces to the puzzle for a national championship run. And so, wanted to ask you, looking to this season, again, we're 10 days away. What are some, outliers, things that maybe people aren't talking about or aren't thinking about that we should be looking for in one, just the opener against New Mexico, right? Like, what are we, is there something that you think that we're going to see? And then two, when you go down to Oklahoma in week 2, is it like, all right, how big of a game is that for a billion different reasons?
One, I think that we're going to see a 40-plus yard completion.
What?
In week 1.
What is that? What?
Yeah, exactly. The only team in the country to not have one last year, including the service academies. It's like a stat that I know it gets said over and over, and it's an insult stat.
Unreal stat.
But yeah, it's like, it's so crazy that I don't even feel that bad about like repeating it 70 times this offseason because it's so insane. But I think it'd be great to see that week 1, get the monkey off the back there. And, I think, it's going to be interesting. You do learn a decent amount from those games against quote unquote cupcakes. Sorry, New Mexico fans that are watching, but Michigan is favored by 34.5 or whatever it is. So you do learn a decent amount. It's a good sign if you control that game from start to finish. Weird things can happen. Bowling Green a couple of years ago, you kind of just throw it out. JJ did. He just threw the ball around and got it picked a few times and whatever. There was, some luck involved. And, but it's also a small sample size. So if they struggle a little bit, or if they don't get their footing, or if someone fumbles and it kind of flips the way the first half goes and it takes you a while to pull away, and then we're all going to be panicked going into Oklahoma, yet it may not mean anything. So I'm just fascinated by that. And I know I was watching the Big Ten training camp tour recently, and Luke Fickell was talking about how they've struggled in those bye games, so to speak, recently. And then they'll go get hammered in, the first game that they play against a quality opponent. And he feels like they need to, build some momentum earlier on. So those are important to coaches. They can learn a lot from seeing their team against another colored jersey. And then, I think the Oklahoma game is so big for a few reasons. One, it proves that Michigan's pretty good. It proves that Michigan's got some grit and resolve and can go down into a hostile environment and win. You have 6 road games this year. 2 of them, I think you'll have more fans than the other team, Maryland and Northwestern. But still, you do have to, deal with and manage the grind of a road schedule. One of them's on the West Coast. Then you come home and play a home game 7 days later. Like it's going to be a good test to get that out of the way early. 2, it gives you a cushion for the college football playoff. You have a loss to work with or 2. And, the third thing is Sharon Moore is not going to be there for the Nebraska game in week 4. Maybe, that makes the Oklahoma game bigger because you got to get that one knowing that that's going to be another tough test 2 weeks later. You lose those 2, you're 2-2. Your only 2 wins are against New Mexico and Central Michigan. You're kind of wondering where this season is going. You could still win out from there, like Cade McNamara would say, and beat Ohio State and get in. But it's dicey. You just don't have that cushion. So, I just think the Oklahoma game is everything. Not everything, but it's everything early in the year in terms of what this team could be. And if you win that, you're going to have some confidence going into the rest of the early season. And I really like how the schedule lightens up kind of after mid-October. Michigan State won't be a cakewalk, but when you have that Purdue, Maryland stretch, Northwestern, yeah,
they fit right in with those teams.
Yeah, no, they could. It's on the road. We'll see.
One of the same.
Michigan State, you guys were at the 49-0 game, so
I don't know. Purdue football went to the Big Ten championship a couple years ago, so
that's right. That's right. Now they got like 100 new players, but I just think that it lightens up a little bit at the end. So if you can make some hay early, you got some time there at the end to kind of pick up some steam, get healthy, and go into the Ohio State game trying to get your 5th straight since 1922 to 27.
Wow.
Would it be insane?
Yeah, that would be crazy. I would just say too, like, I think the Oklahoma game, it's not a do or die, but it is a changes the trajectory of the season type game, right?
It makes some other games later on potentially do or die.
Yes, for sure. And I think honestly for me, it's more so a mentality type game of all right, are we for real? Do we believe in ourselves? I think that these guys do believe in themselves, but there's still those question marks. And until you actually do it on the field, you don't fully know. Right. And so I think that both, honestly, to your point, Clayton, about the New Mexico game, they need to go, and we need that game not to be 7-0 at halftime. You know what I mean? Right. I would love for it to just be all right, they go, New Mexico goes 3 and out almost every time, right? Barely does anything. And then Bryce is cooking. I think if we can do that, then, well, first of all, our fan base is going to be absurd. And it's going to be Heisman talk from minute 1 of that, which I almost want it not to happen because of that. I don't want those expectations to go sky high so quickly. But I want them to have the confidence to be able to go down to Oklahoma and be like, hey, we're the real deal. Let's go do this.
Blew by 90 in week 1. Then we're talking Heisman, we're talking Natty, all these things. But no, you're totally right. I think it's huge. And then then you win that, and the CMU game gives you that opportunity again to kind of build on it. And the season can kind of just feed on itself. It's a younger team, young quarterback. They might need that confidence early in the year. And then if you do drop a clunker, let's say you lose to Washington a week after you made the trip out to LA, then it's not detrimental, not something you can't recover from.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think too, I want to temper expectations on a lot of different things, right? One would just be which is hard for even me to do, right? Like I'm excited and want to, but like talking to our fan base, it's always tough. I want to say this. It's very hard to go 11-1 and 12-0. And it doesn't, I know that we did it a couple of times, but it is like nearly impossible to do. Right.
Yeah. And undefeated 2 years in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like
11-1 the year before that.
That is insane.
Some teams lose 2 games.
Some teams do.
Right.
But I think that,
7.
like, it's okay. It's not okay, but like, it's not the end of the world to lose a couple games. And if, I want to call it like, if you go 10-2 this year, that's a pretty big success with a freshman quarterback that after, an 8-5 season with, the offense being as it is. So just in general, want to temper expectations. Also I feel like I'm screaming this from the mountaintops about Bryce himself of like, he's going to make some mistakes. He is freshly 18, has not seen the field yet as a college football player, and naturally like has a big arm, and that usually translates to, possibly trying to force things. And so, I think that I'm trying to say this as much as possible before we get into the season of like, if he does throw an interception, I promise you it's not the world is not going to end right there.
It'll be on Twitter, all over Twitter. But yeah, but let's say he's Tate Forcier September freshman year.
Oh my God. But
then that's good enough to win those games, I think. Like
for sure.
And then I think he's much more talented and mature and all these things to actually like keep that going and and he's more built for games get cold and he's not on a Rich Rod team. Like, that those things just fell off the rails at the end of those years. But I mean, he did that as a freshman. Chad Henne was good as a freshman. Rick Leach had a good freshman year. I think those are the 4. Bryce will join those 3 this year as a freshman starter if all goes according to plan. Yeah.
Can I ask you, okay, you said had a good freshman year. What does that mean? Let's define that a little bit, because I think to what we're talking about, some people out there in the Michigan universe are going to be like, if you're not JJ McCarthy in 2023, then that's not good. You know what I mean? Which was like the best, most efficient quarterback season of possibly in Michigan history, in NCAA history, right? And so what is it like a good freshman season? What can we give a broad statement of what that looks like?
Yeah, I don't know either. Like I said earlier, I just think that it's so hard to predict what he's going to be because it's such rare air. Like he's a number 1 overall recruit. Michigan's never really had that at that position. They've only had those 3 previous freshmen who have started at quarterback. We've seen it at other teams around the country. I think his stats could be more prolific, so to speak, in terms of touchdowns or yards than even JJ was a couple of years ago. But that may not mean that your offense or your team is the best, right? I mean, there are teams out there that have great stats and quarterbacks that have great stats, and they're a little more empty. JJ, every yard mattered, every touchdown mattered, right? And then that team was up so big they'd pull him in the third quarter. And I mean, the third downs, like all his yards were very, very meaningful. I mean, his stats on third down, his stats on 3rd and long, the red zone stuff, his rushing yards weren't, bountiful, but they were all meaningful because it was always in a big moment. So it's hard to, say however many stats. I think JD Pickell from On3, who does a good job covering college football more broad, he said if he totals 30 touchdowns, he thinks Michigan's going to have a really good season, whether that's rushing, passing, some sort of combination. He thinks that that's a good year for Bryce and a good year for Michigan. I could see that, but it's just hard to play that game. But I do have high expectations. But like you said, I mean, there are going to be some moments where things aren't that great. And in this playoff now, which may go to 28 teams in a couple of years, like you can lose games. Like you said, you don't have to be the best team in the country right away. If you get in the dance and you stay healthy and you're Notre Dame and you play Georgia's backup quarterback, or you're Penn State and you get a good draw, or Ohio State, you get a home game against a team that thinks that they can play in the cold, but they can't. And, not even like those are all, I mean, good for them for all winning those games. If you get in, anything's possible. Notre Dame made the national championship game last year. Penn State was a semifinalist, although they had, 2 easier games. Texas gets to, I believe, the semifinals, right? But they easily could have lost in their first game to Arizona State. So, or I guess they beat Clemson before that, but their second game. So Arizona State was almost there in the quarters or semis or whatever it was. It's hard to keep track of. But my point is, get in. It doesn't have to be the best season ever. You could go out west and lose like Ohio State did last year, or lose on your home field. So yeah, the expectations are just different now than they were before. It's more like college basketball. It's more like the NFL. So it's interesting to see fan bases try to adjust to that. And I haven't either yet. So it's tough, but yeah, at the same time, you could play a tough schedule, have some bumps and bruises. And then at the end of the year, if you're playing well, if you didn't do too bad, and lose 3 games or whatever it is, then you still have a chance at the end.
For sure. So last thing here before we talk about our tailgate is I wanted to ask you, how good is this Oklahoma team? Because we've talked about that a little bit too, where it's really hard to say, but like, I think one thing is they're a big name. Obviously, you're going down to an SEC opponent, which Michigan doesn't do, very often ever, right? For a non-conference game. Now, so they're that big name. They've, but they've struggled. They were what, 6-6 last year, right?
6-7 at the end. Yeah.
6-7 at after the bowl game. And so I think I want to make this point while also asking the question of like, yes, they're a big program. They're the SEC. I don't think it's like if we were to go down and play a Georgia or an Alabama or a Texas week 1, like Ohio State is. So it's not that. It's still a huge game, but it's not like, okay, we're really, going down there with, a tough time. But obviously they bring in John Mateer, who's having his own issues or off-field things going on. I don't even know, like, speaking of Venmo payments from, it's just like insanity. But I guess that was a long-winded way to ask the question of how good do you think Oklahoma will be this year and when we see them in week 2?
I'm so conflicted about it because one of the reasons why a lot of people nationally or just out there in the college football world believe that Oklahoma is going to beat Michigan or they're going to be good this year. I know that like Phil Steele's got them as their number one surprise, his number one surprise team. And he didn't use this reasoning, so this isn't on him, but those are just some examples of people kind of hyping them up. It's like, well, Brent Venables' back is against the wall. They're going to have to win that game. And it's like, well, why is his back against the wall? It's because they haven't been very good. 2 out of 3 years that he's been the head coach, they've gone under 500. Prior to his tenure, they didn't go under 500. The previous time was 1998, I believe. So, wow. And they did join the SEC last year. It was much tougher, but they went under 500 his first year there when they were in the Big 12, which a conference that they dominated under Lincoln Riley. They dominated Texas, right? So they're not the same Oklahoma as what we saw when they made 3 straight playoffs and almost beat Georgia in the, whatever that Rose Bowl was, 2017 or 18 with Baker. So at the same time, their quarterback apparently is a little like Baker, a little like Manziel, a little bit of like he could have a terrible game against Michigan or he could have a great game against Michigan. The defense looks good from, on paper. The offensive line's a question mark. They're very similar to Michigan in a way. New offensive coordinator, new quarterback, great defense back. So whatever team kind of has things figured out on the offensive side of the ball earlier, maybe wins the game. I've predicted a close win for Michigan, low-scoring game, but we'll see. But I'm just fascinated by Oklahoma and the narrative around Oklahoma. And then you say the AP poll come out, they're what, 17 or 18? They weren't ranked in the coaches poll. So like some people are buying, some people are not. I'm interested, but I think it's going to be tough environment at the very least. And Michigan's got some young players, so they've got to be ready to go on the road. They didn't win a road game last year until they beat Ohio State, but at the same time, that should give some guys that are back a little bit of confidence.
Well, I think both teams are similar, right? Like really strong defenses, some questions on the offensive side, new players coming in. I mean, obviously they've got, more proven guys at the college level with Mateer and Jaden Ott as the running back coming in, who was, I thought, a stud at Cal. But similar because Justice Haynes coming in from Bama for Michigan and Jordan Marshall. So, I think it's going to be really interesting. Both teams, I think, probably best unit is the defensive line. Michigan probably argue the secondary as well, and I guess the linebacker core. The defense is just ridiculous as I'm talking through it. We had conversations last year about that defense potentially being better. And it wasn't until later in the year Wink started to really figure it out and play more of a college style. But this defense this year, man, you lose, your best defensive tackle in program history. You lose Will Johnson. You didn't have him for a lot of last year, though, so it's you're kind of used to it. But as I think about this defense, man, that's going to be an awesome game. Awesome environment. I mean, selfishly, I hope it's an earlier game, but, if it's a night game, that's just going to be an incredible environment, and can't wait to watch it, man. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah. And to that point, the defense probably doesn't get talked about enough, and I'm guilty of it too. And Sharon Moore had his press conference last week, and there were hardly any questions about the defense. It should be really good. And if you're John Mateer, one, he didn't fare too well against, I think his completion percentage was under 50% against Power 4 teams last season because Washington State was in the Pac-2 or the two Pac.
Yeah.
And so he still has a lot to prove. The offense coordinator is 29 years old, obviously one of these prodigy genius types. Sometimes it takes a year or half a year for that to click into gear. It helps that they work together at Washington State, Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer. But, they still have a lot to prove. And Wink Martindale has proved he can make life hell for opposing quarterbacks. He did it to Will Howard. He did it even more so to Jalen Milroe. Mateer's probably a better thrower than Milroe, but man, if you're Milroe, you're thinking, I hate Jesse Minter. I hate Wink Martindale. And now that Wink's more comfortable, I think there are going to be some other quarterbacks out there that look back and be like, God, my one bad game was that game against that Michigan team. So it might be, God, I'm thinking 17-14, something like that, really low scoring and kind of a grind it out, kind of an ugly game. People are going to be like, this is the game of the night. This is the primetime game. It's as long as your team wins that one, you don't care at all.
Blue by one. I don't care. Just give me a win.
And also, I think that, we're probably going to have some of those games this year where the defense is going to carry and Bryce is going to not, he's going to maybe struggle or the offense just isn't clicking. I think, again, I look back at what JJ was as a freshman. He wasn't even the starter, obviously, but he made plenty of mistakes and was not really ready to be the guy, and so
right.
Things are going to happen for sure. And I think having that defense to really lean on is going to be huge for them. So, all right, our tailgate, 10 days away. We're so excited. We're going to be at 1006 South Main Street this year. We've got a full lot to ourselves. So excited. It's just on the other side of the stadium. And so you're going to be able to drive by it right there. See all of our stuff. We're pumped. Speaking of Clayton, we are going to have Clayton Anderson, who's a country singer, do a pregame concert for us game one. So we'll be doing that. It'll be awesome. We'll have Woodson Whiskey out there, North Peak Brewing, the Hail IPA, our Blue by 90 beer, Camp Vodka Water will be out there as well. And then Feldman Chevrolet, of course, will be out there too. So
I'll be there.
Pumped. There we go. You'll be there.
Intoxicated.
Yeah. I will be indulging for sure. Clayton, I know you're working, but you can, you're welcome to stop by, hang out for a little bit. But wanted to give that little plug for our tailgate. But plug for you, Clayton, tell the people, what's going on over at On3’s/Rivals, the merger with the site as a whole and you specifically, where they can find you at.
Yeah, I'd say it's an exciting time. Obviously, recruiting's kind of cooking right now. Just head to thewolverine.com. We got a bunch of content. And if you want to become a subscriber for 2 months, which takes you well into these games here, well into the season, I think that'd be up till Michigan State week. You can use the promo code UM in the numeral 1, UM1, for 2 months of access for $1. So
wow,
a good deal. But yeah, recruiting scoop, team scoop, fall camp intel, all that stuff over at thewolverine.com.
All right. Clayton, appreciate you joining us today. This was a long one, going on an hour. It's about that time where we talk for a half-hour pre-show. We talk for an hour. We just are ready for football to be back. So appreciate you joining us today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. You guys are the best.
Yeah, appreciate it. And
We are the best.
Hey, Foxhole guys. That's what we Max.
That's what we bring to the. No, that was Davis. So actually,
sorry.
You're not a Foxhole guy. You're revoked.
Wow. I feel like Brady told us that too, but
maybe.
Brady's a Foxhole guy.
Brady is a Foxhole.
That's a guy I want beside me in a battle.
Yeah. That's another guy too. I mean, we just went an hour and didn't even mention his name, right? Who's like he's a literal captain. He is, speaking of the leader, he's the guy who rallies the troops in every single practice and every single lift and all that stuff. So it's sad that we didn't even mention his name. He's going to be mad.
Someone on the team that does their job better than Max Bredesen does his job.
That's a fact, actually. That's a great way to put it.
Zavada, maybe, yeah.
Zavada could be up
1 and 2 right there.
Yeah, 1A, 1B situation. All right, for us, you can follow us at Blue by 90 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Blue by 90 Podcast on YouTube, and blueby90.com. We appreciate you. Go Blue.
Go Blue.